Now for part 2, sanctuary through others, sanctuary in giving or connecting with others. Stan Allen shares, thanks for the word and concept of querencia. The idea of home, place, or moment of strength in my authentic self comes with genuine service and mutual emotional connection to others. Whether at Abba House, in my personal relations, or slamming a tennis ball deep into my opponent's court and having a fierce exchange. Cliff Durand writes, where do I go to restore my spirit? Early in my adult life, I was inspired by African Americans and their white allies who struggled against racial discrimination. I came to identify with that struggle and elected to teach for 40 years at a historically Black university. Identifying with something larger than oneself gave meaning to my life, and it still does. I have always been moved by those who boldly confront problems, whether large or small. In my own early development, this goes back to my mother, who was an alcoholic. But my family lived in denial. Years later, I realized that this was why I was so deeply moved by those who had the courage to face problems, a courage that had been lacking in my family. To this day, I draw inspiration from the collective courage of peasant communities struggling against the extractive industries that rape their land, the poor of Central America and Mexico who risk a dangerous trek north, and the youth in American cities and towns who brave police clubs, tear gas, and even bullets to protest racism. We live in a world of immense injustice. What sustains my spirit in the face of insurmountable problems is the courage of those who struggle to overcome problems. Frank Toms writes, in my life, sanctuary has come on days in the classroom with my students as we pondered other cultures, spiritual practices, religions, or just explored ourselves. When I sent my 8th graders to ancient China to interview Confucius, Lao Tzu, and followers of the Buddha, they brought back thoughts of peace and tranquility, which I savored. Other times it's been inside other cultures when I lived and taught in England and in the former USSR. Listening to Kazakh 16-year-olds ponder reincarnation in the classroom gave me, and them I think, hope. Nora Cohen writes, my mental place of sanctuary is making cookies or jam. I think of the 6-year-old in each of us when we get a tasty cookie. I love seeing those smiles and grins as they approach the tray of goodies at the UU Fellowship. Butter, sugar, and flour give me joy to turn into treats. It'll be wonderful when we can do these things again. Fruits of the earth give me peace. I love to gather the fruits or berries, search out unusual ones, or grow them. I know the feel of good jam, the way it coats the spoon and bubbles in the pan before I ladle it into sterile jars. I have confidence in making dozens of different kinds and thinking of other delicious new combinations like strawberry mango or blackberry plum. Karen Hoffer shares, several years ago when Kobe Bryant was retiring from basketball, someone here in San Miguel dropped off a very tiny 6-week-old kitten out at the SPA, where I adopted him and named him Kobe. He turned out to be my sanctuary. Being large and a lap kitty, he likes to snuggle his whole self into my small lap, where he becomes a purring machine at full volume. For me, to clear my being, I love to bury my nose and mouth into his warm, soft vibrations. If I am lucky, when I raise my head, he looks up at me with those innocent green eyes and reaches out his paw to pet my nose. This type of kitty love without any restrictions renews my faith in a world without judgment or hate. Kobe is like a happy, vibrational medicine and sound therapy, and he puts me into a safe space. Françoise Yohalam writes, "My sanctuary is in a box." When I moved from Washington, D.C. to San Miguel almost 4 years ago, I brought with me several boxes filled with household things, and I put most of the boxes into storage, forgetting many things they contained. When the pandemic hit and I found myself confined, I felt isolated and anxious, and I decided to rescue one box labeled Souvenirs de Famille, which contained letters and photos of 5 generations of my French family. During these past months, I have thoroughly enjoyed rereading stories about women in my family and reconnecting with precious memories that had faded over the years. This has been my escape, my sanctuary. My mother was born at the beginning of World War I, and I at the beginning of World War II. We both were born in the same village in southwest France, in a region called the Languedoc. In her writing, my mother talks about the tragedy of the aftermath of the war, about families grieving the loss of a son, brother, or husband, and compounded with the arrival of the tuberculosis that indiscriminately decimated young and old. My childhood was not easy. France was physically and emotionally torn apart after the war, but I believe it made me a stronger person. My mother had a difficult marriage, but she wrote about her childhood memories so that my children and grandchildren could learn what life was like when she was growing up in France. She wrote so that I could find solace, pride, and inspiration in these memories and not feel sorry for myself. She wrote so that I could appreciate the genes, the lessons, and the wings I have inherited from a lineage of exceptional women. Their stories provide me sanctuary. Sue Edelstein shares, "One way I find sanctuary is to lean back and think of my friends, my family, and my loves, past and present. I have been lucky in my life to have special relationships." And Betsy Davies says, "My sanctuary is personal. Especially now with COVID and election news bearing down on us, Jim and I find peace and relief from the world in hugs, the two of us. All the stress melts away." This ends this section. And now a few words about our next music, "And So It Goes" by the great Billy Joel. Despite the obvious subject matter of romantic love, to me this beautiful song refers to a broader relationship one has with others in society and with oneself. I believe these lyrics confirm the opportunity we each have to heal disappointment and heartbreak of many, many kinds in the personal sanctuaries of our hearts. Hope you enjoy.